Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us to this final event of Interreg Central Europe project called REIF. I'm Andrea Bardi, the General Manager of the Institute for Transport and Logistics that is based in Bologna, Italy. It is one of the project partners of the REIF project. The project is coming to the last mile, let me say, of its journey. It was a long journey. Well, first of all, thanks all the participants, all the partners, and all the stakeholders that support the project along the journey. The topic, as you know, is the rail freight transport, and in particular the regional initiative to sustain modal shift from road to rail. That is a core of the project, and in particular the policy initiative at regional as well as national level to sustain the modal shift from road to rail. We have a quite tough agenda. As you know, we are pleased to say that we have a quite large number of very competent speaker an expert on this topic, and we combine obviously this speech with the presentation from the project partners to the main result that arise from the REIF project. Let me, before to leave the floor to the first group of speakers for the welcome and opening session, let me just give you briefly some remarks related to how it works, the seminar. Obviously, the participant will have the microphone and the web automatically turn off. But if you during the conference you have any question, please use the question and answer tool to write your question, and I will try to collect some of them and answer during the meeting or later by mail. Presentation will be made available after the event in compliance with GDPR guidelines and speaker consensus, obviously, and the conference will be recorded. So let me start officially the transfer conference and rail shift to regional rail award. With the welcome and opening session, we have as a first welcome speech recorded video by Paolo Ferrecchi, that is the General Manager of the General Directorate of Territorial and Environmental Care of the Emilia-Romagna region, that obviously deal in particular with transport and logistics in Emilia-Romagna region. And I ask to the organizer to launch the video, please.
Good morning to all. It is with great pleasure that I greet you and thank you all on my own behalf and on behalf of the Emilia-Romagna region for your participation of this transfer conference of the REIF project. The REIF project has been a very important project for all 10 participating international partners of 7 different nationalities, as it allowed us to focus and how to improve regional policies to support rail freight transport. The objectives set by the European Commission on this issue are very clear and ambitious. Double the share of rail transport by 2050, and this is what we need to achieve if we want Europe to reach its goal of becoming a first carbon neutral continent. Every region in the EU needs to act on its transport policies, which today account for a quarter of total greenhouse gas emission, to promote more sustainable, safe, and energy efficient ways of transporting goods and people. The Emilia-Romagna region is preparing to take up this challenge. In the short term, by investing in a policy of direct support to rail transport through laws providing incentives for new rail freight service, and in the medium term through the activities of the regional intermodal cluster REIF for the development of projects supporting internationalization, technological and environmental innovation of the companies involved in the intermodal transport chain. In order to achieve this transition successfully, the importance of collaboration between local and international stakeholders is crucial and demonstrated by the region's participation to REIF project. In the medium and the long term, the region, in agreement with the infrastructure managers, has planned major investments to improve the network in terms of increased capacity, safety, and environmental sustainability. Today, during the conference, we will see which indication the REIF project on this issue, and with the awarding of the REIF award winner, we will see other cases in Europe that are having great success in supporting rail modal share can be an inspiration. I will now leave for the floor to ETL Foundation and wish you all the best in your work.
Thank you, Mr. Farecchi. So, Giuseppe Lupino, Head of Unit for the European project area for the ITL Foundation, please.
Thank you, Andrea. Nice to have all of you here at this important conference of the REIF project. I will show what is the program of this conference today. The conference is divided in 5 sessions. The one in which we are involved now in this moment is dedicated to the openings and to the welcome. After the speech of Mr. Paolo Farecchi from the Emilia-Romagna region, we will have the pleasure to have Mr. Winfried Reed from the Interreg Central Europe Joint Secretariat. Mr. Reed will show us which are the main achievements of the last programming period and which are the new opportunities from the new program which recently closed the first call for proposals. The second session is dedicated to the REIF project and transferability plan. So Mr. Klaus Bongertz from the Ministry, from the Thüringer region, will show us the REIF project overview. We will have also a project video afterwards, and Ms. Anna Gerandoni from the Institute of Transport and Logistics will have a presentation on the transferability plan of the REIF project. The third session is dedicated to the REIF project and beyond. There will be a presentation of Mr. Eric Lambert from the Combined Transport Group Chairman, and how the combined transport can be considered as a backbone of a sustainable supply chain. Then a focus on the REIF project with the work package leaders of the project will be presented. In particular, from Blas Jemensek, project manager from the Institute of Traffic and Transport in Ljubljana, Mr. Alberto Cozzi from the Port Authority of Eastern Adriatic Sea, and Mr. Francesco Paolo Nanni Costa from the Institute for Transport and Logistics will show the three main pillars of the REIF project. The fourth session is dedicated to the international session, to an international policy framework and industry perspective. So Mr. Klaus Sondermann from KombiKonsult will have a short overview of intermodal terminals and key to modal shift, which are the main aspect of this modal shift. We have also the pleasure to have Costantino Canu, from CLECAT, which will have a presentation about the multimodal transport and how to achieve the Green Deal objectives from a user's perspective. And from the DG Move, the Maritime Transport and Logistics unit, we will have also Maria Koidu, which will show how to push the intermodal multimodal transport to the future. The last session will be dedicated to the REIF Shift to Regional Rail Award. There will be the presentation of the winners of the award, and I'm very glad to have the Port of Hamburg, the Port Authority of Valencia, and the North Adriatic Sea Port Authority. So I would like to say thank you to all of you. It was a very nice project. Hope to collaborate again with you all and have a nice meeting today.
Thank you, Giuseppe. So as you already anticipated, we are pleased to have the last speech for the welcome and opening session. That is a speech by Wilfred Ritt, that is, as you know, since 2007, he is project manager at JTS, European Territorial Cooperation Central Europe Program. Mr. Ritt, the floor is yours. Thank you.
So, good morning from Vienna. Thank you for the invitation and thank you for the opportunity to complement the project perspective with the program perspective. And what you mentioned already in the beginning, the last mile and the first mile, it's not only true for the project, but it's also true for the program. So one program is coming to an end. I will try to give an overview on these achievements, or in particular where to find these achievements, and then move to the opportunities of the new program. So starting with the heritage of the present program, we have 23 projects approved and successfully implemented in three main priorities. This is one is low carbon mobility in functional urban areas. The second one is improving regional passenger transport systems and linking these regional systems to the TEN-T nodes. And the third one, and this is probably most interesting for this conference, because it is your specific objectives, it is a better coordination of multimodal freight transport stakeholders with your projects embedded here. Now, where to find all the knowledge and how to access this knowledge? We offer different formats on our program website. We have project stories, we have the project's websites themselves, and we have a project output library. And we hope that you use all these formats now also for transferring results of the ongoing projects, but also if you're interested in continue your work in the new program, to use this as a knowledge base to build the next step of cooperation on these available heritage. And this now I lead over to the opportunities of the new program. We have two specific objectives that are interesting, most probably for transport and mobility actors. Again, one is focused more on urban areas, on greening urban mobility. And the second one, at the regional dimension, improving transport connections in rural peripheral areas. And here, passenger and freight transport is combined. So this is most probably interesting for you if you want to go on, build on the available experiences. And then I'm already coming to the first call of project that was closed end of February, so pretty soon. We received 280 applications, 2,600 organizations participating, 70% public actors, 30% private actors. And if now you look at transport and mobility, in the first priority that I mentioned on urban transport, we received 13 applications, and the second one, the regional dimension, is covered by 15. And this is now on our desk, of course, for the assessment to focus on this process. And on the same time, when evaluating these projects, we try also to develop lessons learned from the first call to prepare the second call for next year, the pioneer projects. And you will find more details then, of course, on our website. So I'm coming to an end for my first input today. For us, for program management, it's always crucial to have an experienced and committed counterpart at the project level. And therefore, I want to thank the next speaker, Klaus Bonkertz, for managing this project, for bringing a team together that was very committed and active. And in particular, through the last 2 years of COVID crisis, it was essential to keep this contact constantly and regularly. To successfully close projects. Again, Klaus, thank you for that, you and your team. And my very last point is, I mentioned that a lot of projects are coming to an end. So after this session, I have immediately to move to the next final conference. But of course, I'm available for you via email and other sources. And thank you again for the invitation.
Well, thank you, Mr. Reed, for find the time to take part to our meeting and for sharing also some practical, very useful information. Thank you again, Mr. Reed. So this is the last speech for the welcome and opening session. We open up the first part of the REIF project presentation that obviously regard in particular the content, the pilot project and the transferability plan. Obviously the first speech will be by the lead partner. The partner, and in particular will be by Klaus Bonkertz, that is since 2009 is a referent of the Thüringer Ministry of Infrastructure and Agriculture, dealing with the European regional development at the Spatial Planning and Development Unit of the Ministry. And as project partner will obviously share with us an overview about the REIF project. So please, Klaus, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Bardi, for this nice introduction. And I have to give the thanks back to the GS because you also supported us very, very good and very kindly in this process of COVID and in financial issues and also in the technical issues, and it was a great help for us to have the project and to keep the people together, the partners. And now I will share my screen to start my presentation. Do you see the screen?
Yes, confirm.
Okay, I will give you a brief overview about the REIF project, and I will start a little bit in the history. Around 4 years ago, some partners sat together and we discussed about our territorial challenges, and it does not work. Now it works, okay. And now we found out, or we realized that one of the challenges for most of the regions was that in Central Europe we still have a strong growth rates in volume of freight and freight traffic, but we have only low rail freight transport rate. So we we came to the conclusion that there are needs to, for example, promote short and medium range links, to strengthen intra-regional, inter-regional rail connections. We have to increase both intermodal and also traditional traffic, which means single wagon load, by considering them as important means of the regional production system. And we have to somehow optimize regional transport modes and their combination in the multimodal freight transport chains. And this for us was the trigger to start the REIF project. And here you see some of the project facts. We started in April 2019 and will end the project at the end of this month. And our budget almost was 2.2 million euros. And because it is a real challenge in all of the regions of Central Europe, we gathered a team of transnational partners which are dealing or which are consisting of regional administrations, research organizations, and intermodal hubs. And they created the project, and they created the main objective that we want to promote regional rail freight transport as a kind of feeder infrastructure for the just existing European transport corridors. And for us, it was also important to strengthen more and more the political focus on this regional rail freight transport, because on the regional political level, it is, or it was not an important issue at that time. And what for us also was important to establish a regional stakeholder cooperation, because we have seen that there are many stakeholders, but they don't talk to each other, and the cooperation is not very well done. And so we created this project, and here you see the structure. We have 3 different work packages dealing with smart governance concepts, with concepts to eliminate bottlenecks and foster intermodal services. And last but not least, to anchor all these issues in policy and transfer of the findings of the project to other regions and to other projects. And these work packages are framed by the management and the communication work packages. So starting with the first work package, I want to give some brief overview about the work packages and their objectives. So the first work package was to improve planning and coordination processes and to upgrade the existing or the development of new infrastructure and services for rail freight transport on regional level. And therefore, we created activities like setting up baseline studies, analyzing market potentials for rail freight transport, identifying infrastructure and service bottlenecks in infrastructure and services, and creating a list of priorities of actions to eliminate these bottlenecks and also estimate their costs. And last but not least, also for the future, we have defined potential policy measures to solve these problems or these challenges, these bottlenecks. Outputs of this first work package was that we created joint methodologies to do all these studies, that every region do the same study in the same way, baseline study, market potential, and so on and so on. Therefore, we also created trainings of the methodologies. And as I said before, we created this regional priority list of actions and the definition of different policy measures which could be implemented in policy documents. The second work package has had the specific objective to integrate the railway networks across borders and better link these regional rail freight transport corridors with the main corridors. And therefore, we implemented several pilot actions within the project in the second year of the project, dealing with the fields, for example, setting of innovative coordination platforms or identifying measures for removing infrastructural and functional bottlenecks. Or we developed concepts of activating new rail freight services. And I go through these pilot actions, and you see in the field 1, we developed different tools to optimize the usage of railway transport. We set it up regional governance structures in Emilia Romagna, for example. In the second field, we identified measures to remove bottlenecks in port areas, for example, in the port of Trieste. And in Thüringer, we developed a test scheme to verify that the transport flows and shifting potentials and policy measures. And we set it up a kind of roadmap how to get disused lines used again. And last but not least, we assessed also different development measures addressing both the infrastructural bottlenecks, but also the functional bottlenecks. And in the third field, we try to test different new freight train connections. For example, there is a logistics center near Ljubljana, which is right at the side of a track, but there is no siding at the moment. And Ljubljana created the planning tools to connect this logistics center to the railway line. We defined also railway operational systems to optimize the existing port infrastructures, and we tried to somehow massificate and cluster the existing road cargo to test the reactivation of railway services. These was the pilot actions, and we are we had really good exchange because during these years about the pilot actions and how the pilot actions are implemented in the different regions, and if we can take over some of these pilot actions also to the other regions. So this third work package, policy integration, we wanted to strengthen, as I said, the political focus on the regional rail freight infrastructure. And therefore, in all regions, we established regional advisory boards, which gave us some kind of overview about the challenges and the problems operators and also the industry has to get more freight from road to the rail. And then from these regional advisory boards, or with the help of these advisory boards, we also developed roadmaps for new rail infrastructure and services in the different regions of Central Europe. And last but not least, we also try to identify types of fundings where we couldn't get money to develop these roadmaps or to implement these actions of the roadmaps. And the outcomes of this third work package was we had different capacity building workshops, all in all 21 in all the regions, where we had planners and people who are interested, stakeholders of regional rail freight transport. We try to endorse policy documents in the regions, and we created the transnational transferability plan, which will be talked about later on. And on the strategic level, I can say that I think that REIF was the first step to create more awareness for the importance of regional rail freight infrastructure and services. And now it is somehow the task of all the partners to keep the networks alive and try to get the priorities and the listed measures somehow done in the near future. Thank you for your listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Klaus. Thank you for this overall overview of the REIF project. And we also have to make vivid the REIF journey. We also have a video, a project video. So I would ask to the organizer to launch the video of the REIF project. Thanks.
All across Central Europe, the total volume of freight moved by rail has decreased significantly over the past few decades, even though the area has faced strong growth in traffic volume during the same time period. To reverse this negative trend, large investment programs are underway with a focus on main railway corridors. Complementary to this initiative, REIF, an EU project funded by the Interreg Central Europe program, focuses on increasing modal share of rail freight through mitigation measures for the regional rail feeder system, focusing on infrastructure and services. This 3-year project set the course for good regional governance in promoting rail freight transport in project partner territories across 6 Central European countries: Germany, Austria, Italy, Slovenia, Croatia, and Poland. REIF is developing and applying tools to analyze regional potentials for rail freight transports, including regional baseline studies through which partners detailed the status quo of rail freight services in their region. The market potential analysis, through which partners explain where improvements to the rail freight system in each region can be made. The regional bottleneck catalogues, which highlighted the problematic areas preventing the potentials to fully come to life. The priority list of actions and cost estimations, which emphasize the most important actions that need to be taken to improve the current state of rail freight in the regions. The definition of potential policy measures, which are intended to help realize the identified potentials and overcome existing barriers. The definition of potential policy measures and the priority list of actions served as base documents for further investigation in later project activities. Besides these smart governance concepts for improved regional rail freight transport, the project includes a total of 8 pilot actions being implemented across 3 Central European countries, those being Germany, Italy, and Slovenia. The pilot actions test novel approaches to overcome different discontinuities of the regional rail network in the participating regions. The project is also focusing on anchoring project findings within regional public administrations and market players, integrating project findings into policy documents, and transferring project results to other regions across Central Europe. This has been done by organizing capacity building workshops in all partner regions, during which the project, its ongoing activities and results were presented, establishing regional advisory boards as expert groups whose recommendations and assistance ensured the completion of the consolidated regional roadmaps entitled New Rail Infrastructure Services 2030. These roadmaps serve as operational plans on how to realize the interventions included in the priority list of actions and cost estimates, as well as implement the previously mentioned potential policy measures. 25 infrastructure actions, 1 rolling stock and machinery action, 6 service and operation measures, and 6 legislation and administration measures have been tackled by the roadmaps. The final key result of the project is the development of the Transnational Transferability Plan, with the goal of promoting the replication of project activities in other regions across Central Europe. The project's innovative approach is leveraging on enhanced coordination and governance within and between regional contexts, as the project addresses the transnational dimension. The new discoveries made within the project help us better understand how to optimize organization of freight transport in TNT corridor hinterlands, and how to integrate and mainstream new approaches and solutions into strategic and operational transport planning across all of Central Europe.
Okay, welcome back. So now, as has been mentioned in the project video, we have a presentation that refer to the transferability plan. That is one of the building blocks of the REIF project. So the presentation will be presented by Anna Giarandoni, that is Senior Project Manager of the Institute for Transport and Logistics. Please, Anna.
You are mute, Anna, sorry.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Okay, now.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Andrea. Good morning to everybody. It's a great pleasure for me to be here presenting the transferability plan of REIF project. But before to do that, please let me start my presentation by underlining also by myself how the REIF project is a project that we can stay in line, on time, with one of the most important challenging that the whole EU economy is facing, which is to become the first climate neutral continent by 2050. This goal requires, in fact, ambition changes in transport. A clear path is needed to achieve a reduction of transport-related gas emission by 2050. The EU objective is very challenging and depends heavily on transport and the success of EU modal shift policy. But nowadays, climate change, public concern for air pollution caused by transport sector, congestion, and also truck driver shortage have all directed the attention of policymakers to rail freight transport. Also, COVID-19 pandemic can become a turning point to accelerate the green transition of goods transport. In our vision, currently, only rail freight transport offers a mature and readily available solution for a widespread use of zero emission transport. So this is why we say that REIF project has produced very important results at a time different from the previous one, because now we are having high attention of policymakers to rail freight transport, but we also have public financing and many economic recovery programs which prioritize green transport infrastructure. In this context, thanks to the activity of the REIF project that will be explained in detail in the presentation of my colleagues in the next section, we were able to elaborate 7 roadmaps to enhance new rail infrastructure and service in 2030. This slide just want to give a picture to represent the intervention, the policy measure included in those roadmaps. Intervention that also include soft action and regulatory and legislative aspect, but which above all focused as evidence on the value about 60.5 billion of the planned investment of the infrastructural improvement, which remain the priority for all the REIF partners. But the particularity of REIF project was to investigate not only and not just the link within the TEN-T network, but also how a different layer, the layer related to the regional improvement, can optimize and use fund to create the condition, because the network will be reinforced as we investigate in detail in our roadmap. Then, having said this as a promise, let's start talking about how to transfer the experiences of the REIF project to other contexts in Europe through the elaboration of transferability plan that I'm going to present to you. focus on the transferability process in general term, we have to answer to the following question. The first was why? Which are the main aims, which are to maximize the project result, their impact, and to ensure an efficient use of EU resources by sharing the result obtained. And then we have to reply to the question what? Identification are the key messaging resulting from the project activity. And then we can talk about how, which are the transferability tool, which are strictly related to the creation of the networks, international and local network to implement project and dissemination activity. And then we can mention the operational measures describing each action plan. Coming to the key message to be transferred, as Klaus said before, it was a very long journey. So it's difficult to summarize our key message in a slide, in a few points, but we try to do it. And in this point, you can find the answer to the question, what? On the basis of the lesson learned in the REIF project, 5 key messages were identified. They are ranging from wide kind of topic, which range from transport planning process, stakeholder involvement, harmonized governance for intermodality, competence development, and of course, promotion of regional and local infrastructure needs. All with the aim of support the railway network of the involved entity to increase the modal share of rail cargo transport and increase intermodality. This represents a further attempt to generalize and make the concept learn more universal and transferable to other target region actors through the methodology outlined in this plan. So, describing to detail these 5 key messages, we have to say that establish a dialogue on the transport planning process between the European supranational level and the local region dimension is very crucial. We of course know that we have a European level planning that refer to TEN-T network and this corridor, where the consultation are at very high level, but we know that we have also territorial level planning that meet concrete requests and infrastructure needs. In fact, it's necessary to recognize the 2 levels and establish a dialogue between the priority in both the dimensions. As I already said, it's important to invest also outside the TEN-T network. That does not mean subcontracting user fund, but rather imply the creation of the condition for the network itself to be strengthened and optimized, as also the roadmap represents in our project history. And then we have to suggest to follow the deep analysis that we have the opportunity to do with this project, which refer a baseline analysis of the state of the art of the rail freight transport in our region, which involved also the market potential analysis, bottlenecks definition. This is create a sort of understanding, a framework in which the future policy measure will be put in place. And then we want to spend some word about the importance to create a specific entity and competence center dealing with logistic and intermodality at the regional level. The competence in this field are crucial. We can say that there is a big lack of training of professional figures in this issue. And we need to disseminate and promote the opportunity related to rail freight transport through our economy, through our industries. So to explain how the promotion of logistics is not intended only as a real estate element, but a crucial key to sustain the economy in our region. So we can underline the fact we need to carry out study, research and initiatives related to intermodality and sustainable logistics. And then we have a strong experience of that. We want to say that the development of logistic cluster gathering major logistic hub at the regional level, both sea and land side, can be very, very important, because it is important also that this cluster involving port, which are the key players, as also demonstrate the REIF awarding ceremony, what we are going to award 3 ports for the success they obtain in promoting rail freight transport. And then we want to mention the potentiality to exploit opportunity for discussion with high institutional level to directly promote local priority and infrastructural need. For example, we can work in the governance framework in the EU macro strategy, and for instance, 10T corridor forms that already connect many regional administration, but can be reinforced. And then we can talk about the target actor. We are focusing on in this transferability plan. This is certainly essential to represented by the target actor, meaning the entity that, thanks to a specific set of characteristics and peculiarity, present a greater potential for the adoption and rolling out the result of the innovation being at the center of the transferability process. In this case, given the broad objective of the project, which aim at supporting rail freight transport at the whole intermodal logistic chain, it's perhaps superfluous to develop a detailed methodology. We can say that we identify 3 main elements that seem to be necessary to be available for success transfer, which are the viability of railway infrastructure, of course, to be improved, the viability of intermodal logistic hub at the regional and local level to be improved as well. But of course, we need to meet the political will of regional and local administration to support, really support rail freight transport and intermodality. Having described the broad particularity of that allow to identify the target region, let's go in detail to quadruple helix framework, which can be useful tool to supporting us in identify and categorize the relevant stakeholder. More specifically, it represents a complex innovation model in which 4 different sectors, namely research, industry, public institution, and civil society, interact between each other. The idea is to encourage and implement innovation process through transversal collaboration on the proactive sharing of knowledge and experience. The quadruple helix model has been applied to REIF in order to identify a first list of proposed category of relevant stakeholders, which are, of course, logistic operator, regional cluster for intermodal, opinion leader, expert, but also university, and of course, regional and local administration. Another important element of the transferability process are the tools implemented to streamline the project result as a key message, target region, and more in general, a wider audience of authority and stakeholder. In this case, the measure of tool planning within the transferability process are highly interconnected with networking and communication and dissemination instrument activity. Having a transversal function, this will have an important role enhancing the reparability and transferability strategy, by enabling to reach a wider audience and by providing long-term dissemination transfer tools. In this purport, some 5 operation measures have been identified to facilitate the streamline of key message to target actor. The first one has to do with communication and is aiming at providing target region with appropriate means of communication to establish a dialogue with the REIF partner. I think that the tool that also Mr. Reid annunciate us can be very, very useful to better implement this message through the other EU region. The second and the third concern the organization of the target event to disseminate project result, but also to provide regional and local administration with training section to better deal with the rail option and logistic more in general. We think that the promotion and the development of local working group to entire logistic chain where stakeholders from port and to the hinterland can discuss common problem and agree on possible solution and strategy will be the success factor of this vision. Last but not least, the fourth measure takes the involvement of stakeholders through the creation of dedicated cluster and networking group at the regional local level. The aim in this case is to establish a shared governance in which decision and shared priority intervention can be easily taken. At the same time, it's important to transfer the result priority of regional and local actors at the higher institutional level, as already said at the beginning of this presentation. We think that through an activity, participation, exploitation of the opportunity for dialogue that are available. More specifically, this is the case of the corridor forum, which are organized by corridor coordinators and the EU macro strategy, which also represent a multinational governance structure, pursuing common aims in different fields, including that transport and sustainability. And this is my last message. Thank you for your attention, and I give the floor to the moderator.
Thank you, Anna. Thanks for sharing the transferability plan of the rail project and to underline how much are relevant not only the infrastructural bottlenecks, but also the functional bottlenecks and the involvement of the stakeholder for an effective governance to be able to sustain the strategy of modal shift. So we have the second session. We are a little bit in delay, so I ask all the speakers to be so kind to stay in the time schedule in the agenda. And before to go to the lesson learned and the pilot result by the REIF project, we are pleased to have a keynote speech that is by Eric Lambert. Eric Lambert is active in railway sector since 2000, and he is also chairman of the UIC Combined Transport Group since 2011. And he also teaches logistics and transport in Luxembourg and is a guest professor at the Sorbonne University. So, Mr. Lambert, thanks for joining us in this final event, and the floor is yours.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you the point of view, so the position of the Combined Transport Group on the UIC. First of all, some words about who we are. So the UIC, as you can see on the logo, we have this year the 100-year anniversary. That's an association of the railway company worldwide, existing since 1922. And within the UIC, we have this special group, Combined Transport Group, where we have as members the railway undertaking active in Europe, from Lithuania to Spain, going through Poland, Cheshire, Luxembourg, Germany, Austria, Swiss, Italy, and so on. So we are a special group from the UIC, and our aim is to promote and to coordinate our job, our works within the combined transport for increasing the part of the combined transport on the railway. So the next, please. So the aim of our job today, as Anna said before, we have to take into account for the time being the European Parliament resolution, and of course the climate and environment activities and law, the European climate law. So once again, as we all know, the European Green Deal and the Fit for 55 package programs already existing, and to have to reach the goals to defined minus 55% by 2030 and the climate neutrality in by 2050. So that's also the aim of our work today. It's the leitmotif we are facing with during our works. And decarbonization and effectively countering and the challenge of our times, the pandemic, social inclusion, and so on. And then these goals cannot be achieved without a major impact on the way the transportation is done today. And we have to take into account that for us, within the transport sector, when it comes to a longer distance freight segment, the combined transport delivers all what we need. An example is then this graph, this table coming is an extract of our UIC report on combined transport 2020. We can see here that it's clear that the share of the rail freight, and in particular the combined transport, has increased from 2009 to 2018 by 52% in terms of volume and TEU. So plus 52% since 10 years, within 10 years. And the combined transport will be really a key driver in order to achieve the 30 by 2030 objective. And also what we have seen in this report is also that this is also endorsed by the big players with a positive outlook for 22 until 24 regarding the volumes and the revenue on the combined transport. And more of the big players are sensitive to added value of combined transport in an integrated, I will come back on this, integrated and tomorrow also a more digitalized supply chain. So that the results of our report 2020 and also the study ongoing for the time being for the next report that will be published in 2022 in the end of this year, the mental shift will be the main key of the supply chain models, and because only the mental shift will lead to the modal shift. So mental shift is very, very important. And the second key factor for the development of combined transport is also to take into account the interoperability. That should be, that must be the guiding line for the revision procedures of the various European directives on the way. For example, the weight and dimension 96/53 is ongoing, and the combined transport 92/106. Yesterday, we have received information that the public consultation is launched until May this year. So that's our processes ongoing. And in our view, as railway undertaking, specific for the combined transport, the interoperability must be really the guideline. Because, of course, as we all know, and always all said, we need more rail freight. And combined transport is an integral part of the solution for encouraging the modal shift and ensuring that the rail becomes the backbone of the future mobility. And in this aim, we have also, as railway undertakings, launched our initiative Europa on European level, with all the big players, railway undertaking, are active in this initiative named the Rail Freight Forward initiative. The next slide, please. So the highlights for this development in combined transport. The first thing is that, as I mentioned already before, our next UIC report on combined transport will be published by the end of this year. So the analysis and the study are ongoing, and will focus on several key points. The first is, of course, as usual, we will have the complete statistics on the intra-community flows, which confirm already today the importance of the combined transport and specific during the pandemic that we are affected by since 2020. The second key point, interesting, and it comes down on the REIF project, that's the impact of the Suez Canal improvement some years ago, and the impact on the intercontinental flows, and a possible transfer flow from the northern European ports to the Mediterranean ports. So that's also something, a key point that we have to take into account when we speak about developing the railway infrastructure, developing the combined transport possibilities and opportunities. This flow, this transfer of flow, is ongoing, and we have to take this into account. A simple example, I have seen 3 weeks ago that the Piraeus port, for example, has become the fourth maritime port in Europe. When you see where the ranking of the Piraeus port 5 years ago, and as I have seen, and it's been published 3 weeks ago, it's the number 4 today. So there is the transfer of flow, and we have to take this into account in our opinion, in our view, how to develop the combined transport in the future. And last but not least, also a key point is that the business models are evolving. We see that shipping lines are investing more and more in the rail terminals and transport. As example, Maersk, CMA, CGM, MSC are developing their own railway undertaking, their own terminals, port activities, and so on. So that's an evolving that we have also to take into account, as also that the logistics service providers are developing more and more complete supply chains, including the transport lines. So that are the highlights that we have to take into account in our in thinking and how to develop the railway world in the future. And in our view, and it's exactly, I'm really positive on this, is the same conclusion I have seen from Anna's presentation on slide 10. So the adequate answer for this is that, in our view, within the framework of the development of the European transport corridor, the European transport corridor as defined in the new TNT regulation to come, it will be important to cover the European territory, the whole European territory, with a network of road rail terminals, equipped, of course, with the necessary technologies needed by the market for the transfer of the transport unit, including the non-craneable semi-trailers, and linking, so these road rail terminals linking the industrial centers in Europe and the large seaports together. I have seen in your media, in your film that you have then provided before, a lot of semi-trailer, for example, in the Trieste port. CFL, we are running a train 7 times a week from Trieste to Bettembourg with 100% semi-trailer. So that's a market that we have to take into account in our thinking and for the development of the combined transport in future. So that's, once again, in our view, the adequate answer should be to have a network of railroad terminals equipped with adequate technology and linking the industrial center and the large seaports together. And these terminals should be the center of gravity of logistics zone, offering all the necessary services for the integrated supply chain. That should be our in our view, the adequate answer. And this type of terminals within areas, logistic areas, already exist today. It's not something new, something that we have to find out. It's already existing in Europe. We have some example, and you will see on the next slide the 3 good practices already exist. So please, next slide, please. So here, only for a presentation, the three terminals. The first on the left side, Bettembourg in Luxembourg, that you can see the area. Now we have on the upside the terminal railroad with the railway motorway, allowing us to load semi-trailer, also non-craneable. Now we have more than 800 parking places for the trailers in our area. This area is, of course, linked with the other side, with a warehouse, with a big logistic center. The second example in Italy, it's Verona. So you can see on the right place. So Verona is also a wonderful example for linking a logistic area, industrial zone with a railroad terminal linked to all the industrial area in Europe with the trains. So Verona is also a second example. And the third that I've taken here for the presentation is Dourges. Yeah, Dourges is near Lille in France, where you can see on this picture, there are 3 modalities. So you have the road, you have the rail, and you have also the river, so that all the possibilities are here and integrated into an industrial zone. That should be, in our view, the future. So linking a network of such terminals and industrial zone with trains and combined transport relation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric, for this overview, and it will be a pleasure to read your report when will be available with some very crucial content and issues for our item. And let me go in deep in the next half an hour. Thank you. With the REIF project results, we have 3 speeches that are presented by the partner involved in the 3 REIF work packages that refer to the work package that Klaus mentioned before. So the first speech is made by Blas Jemensek, that is senior researcher and project manager at the Institute of Traffic and Transport of Ljubljana, and the lesson learned refer to the smart governance concepts for improved regional rail freight transport. So please, Blas, the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you very much. Can you see my presentation?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, just a second.
Okay.
Please.
It's okay.
Presentation mode.
Yes, of course. Is now okay?
No, we see, but not in presentation mode.
Just a second.
At the bottom should be on the right at the bottom, okay? It doesn't work. If not, Enrico, can we try to share the PowerPoint?
What about now?
No, we see, but very small.
Okay.
But now my colleague will provide it to you and you will say next.
Okay, please.
Okay. Thank you, Enrico. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to me to share with some results of the work package 1. My name is Baš Imašek from the Institute of Transport, which is the company within Slovenian Railways, who was the work package 1 leader. So in work package 1, you can just go to the next slide, please. I will present you some activities within the work package 1. Which was first one is the baseline study. First we want to know what is the status quo, what are trends, what are policies as a starting point. Further, we analyze the market potential for in transport. Then we identified the bottlenecks in infrastructure and services, and also made some proposal for the policy recommendations, how to improve the situation in the future policy documents. But in my presentation, mainly I will focus on the bottlenecks, because I think the bottlenecks are the biggest obstacle which hinders the growth of freight transport and its development. And also some policy recommendations based on that bottlenecks. So we can go to the next slide. You can just skip that slide quickly. So our regions are Austria, Styria, the region in Austria. Then we have. You can just go quickly to that slide. Then we have Croatia, who was involved the whole country within the project. Then we have, you can skip the slide, please. Trieste region, Trieste city, which is in Friuli, Venezia, Giulia. Then we have Reggio Emilia, Romagna in Italy, was also involved. Then we have Slovenia, which was the whole country involved also. Thüringer, which was the lead partner, the region within Germany. Then we have the Polish region, West Pomerania, Lubusz, Lower Silesian, and then we have the last region was analyzed are the counties actually in Hungary. So here are the bottlenecks. We developed some methodologies, and then also based on that the methodologies we analyzed and found the most important bottlenecks, which can be we identified four options of the bottlenecks. Because first, everyone who thinks about bottlenecks just think
things about the infrastructure, but the infrastructure is one of the bottlenecks, but we have also the bottlenecks in rolling stock area, bad quality. We have also bad services in operation. Also can be legislative bottlenecks. But in next slide, I will now show you, just explain a little bit more of that points. So please move to the next slide. So we can see in the field of the infrastructure, we can have railway lines which have bad technical characteristics, which not correspond to our situation, like axle road, track gauges, and so on. We can also have lack of terminals, so bad access to terminals. We can have lack of berths. So these are the most important significant infrastructure bottlenecks. But on the other hand, on the next slide, we have also the bottlenecks in terms of the rolling stock machinery, lack of locomotives, bad quality, or terminal equipment, then lack of cranes, lack of the access points to terminals and ports and so on. Then in the next slide, please. Then also services. Bad services are also here very important. For example, this includes also hardware, software, and also other aspects which are important for smooth freight transport operations. But if are not sufficient, for example, if there is bad communication technologies, bad cooperation within parties, it is also present the bottlenecks. We can also have, for example, lack of offer of some providers, some transport restrictions. For example, some transport providers and terminals are not available on certain hours and so on. Also lack of labor force. So it is also very important here. And please the next slide, go to the next slide. And also some administrative bottlenecks, like environmental sub-restrictions. Then we have also legislation and standards which can also represent the bottlenecks because it not correspond to the needs of the transport, and there are delays and so on. So we try to analyze that characteristics. So please go to the next slide. And here are some bottlenecks that we identified. I will summarize just this, not talk about all. So the most important are actually the lack infrastructure, old-fashioned infrastructure, access to infrastructure. We have missing terminals, but on the other hand, in some countries also complex legislation, lack of knowledge, bad information and communication technologies. These are aspects and bottlenecks which we identified in that analysis. Please go to the next slide. And then in the next step, we prepared the benchmarking analysis based on the baseline sort of survey, based on the market potential study, and based on the bottleneck analysis. So we found out that a lot of regions like Styria and Italian regions has actually good economy, good potentials, also good infrastructures, but there were missing connections between some terminals, some access to infrastructure is not sufficient. So, for example, in Croatia, we have actually bad quality, poor level of interoperability, and so on. So in that regions, if you summarize, most of the advantages are good economy, good potentials, but on the other hand, bad infrastructure, lack of access to the infrastructure, and bad quality of infrastructure. Could you go please to the next slide? And for example, in West Pomerania, they have actually well-developed rail network, also good railway connections. But again, a poor technical condition of railway lines, also some lack of knowledge in that field, also limited funding of the infrastructure, and actually the slow development is also one of the reasons that freight transport is declining in last years, which it was identified on most of the regions, was that trend identified during our analysis and so on. So can you go please to the next slide? And here are some the main conclusions, and also based on that analysis, we were also within work package 1 provided some suggestions how could we improve the situation. But of course, first, because all these investments, these measures actually are of high costs and needs a lot of different stakeholders and so on. And in most of the cases, this should be somehow included in the strategy documents. So we made the proposal how to implement that message also in the future policy documents, like strategies, master plans, regional strategies, and so on. So based on the bottlenecks we identified in previous our studies within work package 1, the most of suggestions was to construct some missing links, to upgrade some railway lines, also to upgrade, for example, terminals, to improve the connections. These measures are quite similar in most of all the regions, because also, of course, the problems are identified are very similar. So can you go please to the next slide?
1 minute, please, Blas.
Prosim?
1 minute, please.
Yes, of course. This is my last slide. Just for example, in Slovenia, also we have actually freight transport is in good conditions. Transport share, transport is growing, but there are the missing links, the connection to the terminals. There is also a bad communication between the railways and the ports. So here are our, for example, our proposals, and in West Pomerania also, including also, how to say, also construction and electrification of new railway lines and upgrade existing one. So just summarize in few sentences. Work package 1 and also REIF project was very good opportunity that we were able to analyze the most critical problems in the freight infrastructure, concentrating to the regional lines. We identified problems we also proposed measures, and also we went step forward. So to prepare suggestions and proposals for the future policy documents, which is good opportunity that in the next steps that measures could be actually implemented in the real life. So thank you very much for the.
Thank you, Blas, and sorry to push you to speed up, but the time is running out. So it's time for the second lesson learned by, thanks to the activity of WP2, that refer to the implementation and coordination of concepts to eliminate bottlenecks and foster intermodal services, that will be presented by the WP leader, Alberto Costi, that is project manager of the EU projects at the Port Network Authority of the Eastern Adriatic Sea, that is the Port Authority, the former Port Authority of Trieste. Please, Alberto.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. It's better to use the old version of our name, otherwise people do not understand who we are. Good morning to all of you, to all the participants. Thank you for attending. I will shortly introduce the results of Web Package T2.
Sorry, Alberto, can you put in presentation mode? Okay, thank you.
Can you see the change in the slides?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. So a very short presentation. All the deliverables are uploaded on our website, so you can have a look more in depth there. But after the analysis that was presented by Blaž, we all made some very concrete pilot actions in two main topics. So with two main aims, which were to eliminate bottlenecks and foster intermodal services. And all pilot actions were clustered into three main topics. The first one was setting up innovative coordination platforms. And in this case, we had two pilots from Luca Koper and Region Emilia-Romagna and ITL. Then the second topic was identifying measures for removing bottlenecks. And in this case, one of our pilot action was done by us, one by the lead partner, and one by Region Emilia-Romagna and ITL. And the third one was about developing concepts for new rail freight services. In this case, we had three pilots performed by Promet Institute, ourselves, and Regione Emilia-Romagna and ITL. More in detail, these two tables summarize the main content of the pilot actions. So concerning the first topic, Luca Koper, the Port of Koper, implemented a digital system aiming to speed up operations. I will show it a little bit later into more detail. And Regione Emilia-Romagna and ITL jointly worked on the ERIC cluster, the Emilia-Romagna Intermodal Cluster, which is a real good practice and example of how to put together rail transport stakeholders. Concerning the second topic, the Port of Trieste, so ourselves, we identified the existing bottlenecks, not only the Port of Trieste concerning railway transport, from the physical point of view, but up to the national railway line up to Monfalcone. Because we wanted to understand how much room there was for further traffic growth. And then the lead partner in pilot action number 4 developed a roadmap for the revitalization of disused or currently not used routes for rail freight transport, which is the core of the project. And the third pilot action in this second topic was done by Regione Emilia-Romagna and ITL, and Regione Emilia-Romagna and ITL developed a new regional freight transport model for the whole Emilia-Romagna region. And then concerning the third topic of the pilot action, so the activation of new rail freight services, Promet Institute prepared documentation for the project design for the construction of a new side rail track connecting the Ljubljana-Kočevje railway line and the car logistics center near Grosuplje. Ourselves, we made a digital tool in order to assess the possible clusterization of transport flows. And Regione Emilia-Romagna investigated innovative solutions to track traffic volumes in the Emilia-Romagna region. I will now go a little bit more into detail in two pilot actions, which are two port pilot action. The first one is a pilot action in Luca Koper, and they are both IT, let's say IT related pilot action. So Luca Koper focused on the iron ore terminal, and they implemented a concrete pilot actions with new cameras to investigate and register the incoming outgoing wagons by camera. This may seem a small pilot action, but I can assure you it is a very important tool in processing data through the IT systems of the port authority, or in the case of Luca Koper, in the IT systems Luca Koper, for managing and more thoroughly identifying any potential issues with the wagons before they leave or as they enter the port. And the second pilot action, which is IT related, is our own pilot action, and we developed a new operational model through an IT system, which is the basis of what we would like to do to become the digital twin of the port of Trieste, in order to identify not only the bottlenecks, because we already did it in the first pilot action, but in order to understand how to change the layout of the railway sidings in order to accommodate additional traffic. So capacity constraints could, of course, heavily affect traffic growth, and we wanted to analyze how to minimize them in order to attract additional traffic on the rail. So all in all, some lessons learned from all the pilot actions, which, as you could see, they were quite diverse in their content, but they all had some common goal, which was to put more goods on the rail. So the main focus was about reactivation of dismissed lines, construction of new sidings, and development of functional and reliable intermodal services and new cooperative governance models, which is something which is pretty important concerning intermodal transport. One main lesson learned is that it's not only about everything about capacity of railway, I would say railway infrastructure, but it's really more about new cooperative governance models and new ways of using the existing railway infrastructure, which already exists, but maybe it's not being used, and we need to understand why it is not used, and go also on the market related components of the reasons why it is not used, in order for railway cargo to become more important in the next future. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Alberto, also for saving some minutes from your presentation. And now it's time to the lesson learned by VP3 that will be presented by Francesco Paolo Nanni Costa, that is a transport engineer and project manager in ITL Foundation. And the title is Anchoring Policy Integration and Transfer of Project Findings. Francesco, please.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. This presentation, I will illustrate the activities carried out and the result that have been achieved in the WP T3, Anchoring Policy Integration and Transfer of Project Findings. In WP3 activities, the studies and the pilot that have been illustrated in the previous presentations have been capitalized in order to convey the REIF key messages within the regional planning offices and stakeholders, to define a roadmap for the identification of the future freight rail transport system of the region involved in REIF project, to affect the policy instruments of the territories involved, and in order to build a strategic perspective towards the Central Europe territories. Concerning the roadmap, we can define the roadmap as an operational plan where the policy action shaping the future freight rail transport regional system are collected, covering the time horizon until 2030. The priority areas in which the action has been divided are, and they are similar to that one that it was illustrated in the previous presentations: administration and legislation, rolling stock and machinery, service operation, and transport infrastructure. Project partners have also identified the main challenges and the funding needs requested for the implementation of the action in the roadmap. And as you can see from the table below, almost about the 95% of the total cost of estimated of all the action concern the improvement of transport infrastructure. The aim of the roadmap is to address the policy action in the regional and national plans concerning the freight rail transport. The development of the roadmap has been assisted by the regional advisory boards that are the networking groups composed by public and private stakeholders involved in the freight rail transport issues. The aim of the regional advisory board is to co-create the REIF strategy through the integration in the project findings into the region, and the activities of the regional advisory board in each region. One regional advisory board has been established, and the activities of this board should not stop with the conclusion of the REIF project, but they should be permanent. They should represent a permanent coordination mechanism to facilitate the realization of infrastructure and service development. On the right box, we can see the common participants that joined the regional advisory board at project level. Among them, we can see ministers, port authorities, university, operational working companies, and railway infrastructure managers. The regional advisory board discussed about the definition of the draft roadmap, about the funding needs, and the validation of the final roadmap. So to conclude, the establishment and the activities carried out by regional advisory board have provided the guidelines for the co-creation of the REIF strategies. Here we can see some of the lessons learned from the roadmaps. Almost all project partners highlighted the need to improve the transport infrastructure system. In particular, common priority action concern increasing of the capacity of the main railway lines, increase of number of multimodal logistic platforms, improve the road network accessibility of the road rail terminal, and the reactivation and the revitalization of disused route traffic, route for freight rail traffic. Even the shunting operation remains critical activities along the intermodal chain, and a renewal of the rolling stocks is also required. Furthermore, even the improvement of the rail connection between port and hinterlands is seen as a priority in order to foster the creation of an integrated network of port and hubs in the Central Europe territories. Another another type of group, another type of meeting that have been organized in these years are the regional capacity building workshops. The main difference between this workshop and the regional advisory board is that the regional capacity building workshop were training events, while the regional advisory board, as said, supported the development of the roadmap. The main goal of the regional capacity building workshop were the update participant about the REIF findings. Indeed, some of the analysis and studies carried out were illustrated during this workshop, such as the market analysis, the future rail infrastructure and service, and the roadmap. Furthermore, another main goal was to create a common policy framework within the territories involved in the project, in line with the aim of supporting their planning and capacity building. At project level, about 300 people joined this kind of workshop. The activities of the integration of the REIF findings in the regional policy instrument is still ongoing. The activities carried out and the result achieved during the studies, during the pilot activities, and during the roadmap development should affect the planning of freight rail transport in Central Europe territories. At product level, a strategic plan that will be interested by REIF activities are regional development and port authorities operational plans, regional transport plans, national transport development strategies, and the regional operation program. To conclude, the last main aim of the work package is to build a strategic perspective towards the Central Europe territories. Three main results are foreseen. One is the transferability plan and the lesson learned for the replicability to the territories, into the territories of Central Europe, and about this plan and the lesson learned in the previous presentation, you could see some brief results. Furthermore, transnational policy conference was held in the October of the last year. The conference saw the participation of international policymaker institutions such as Network of European Railways and the DG Move, with a representative from the unit single European rail area. The main topic discussed during the conference concerned the challenges for freight rail transport on international, national, and regional level from the perspective of freight forwarders, and about the initiatives in order to support the transport on the freight rail transport on European level. Finally, the representative of the regions involved in the REIF project participated into a roundtable about the challenges and the potentialities for the regional freight rail transport. I have concluded my presentation, and I would like to thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, Francesco. And yeah, we have almost in line with the agenda, and we received a couple of questions on the last group of speakers, in particular a question to Francesco Nanni Costa and a question to Alberto Cozzi. So the question to Nanni Costa is referred to the rolling stock. And yeah, the question is, you identified the need for investment in rolling stock as a crucial need for overcoming bottleneck and constraint. And the question is to provide a little more detail on which kind of investment in which kind of rolling stock you map. And the second question is to Alberto Cozzi, as I said, that is related to, this is more on the business strategy side, let me say, of the Port Authority. The question is related to the strategy of internationalization of the Port Authority. The question is how much the strategy of internalization involving shareholder also in the port community play a role in boosting intermodal connection between the port of Trieste and its hinterland. I will start, if you agree, by Alberto Cozzi, if you want to give an input on this question, please, Alberto.
Yes, thank you for the question. But you know, the answer that I will give is it applies to us, but of course the answer would be it depends on the status of the governance models of governance model of the Port Authority. You know that in Europe we have different governance model. In Italy we have a landlord approach, but already our neighbors and partners in REIF, Luca Copra, they have a different model. In Northern Europe they have yet another different model. So in Italy, we as public port authorities, we cannot make any kind of commercial activity in the ports at present. So, and the activities are implemented by port concessionaires. This means that it's actually a mutual support. So we support our concessionaires if they want to increase their railway transport by implementing the right investments in on our side of the railway sidings, which we are doing. We are doing it right now with our own funds. We are doing it with national funds for a total of almost 200 million euros to be spent in the next 5 years. But of course, it's up to them. It's up to the concessionaires to invest also on their railway sidings. So, but I think that here in Trieste, there is a mutual agreement between the port concessionaires on their side and the Port Authority on our side to cooperate on that. And we are investing a lot and they are investing a lot. This for the railway infrastructures, but it's not only a matter of infrastructures, as I said, it's also a matter of soft infrastructures, but also as a marketing path. We cannot, of course, sell railway services to, for instance, international investors, because this is not our job, but we can accompany their port terminals in their roadshows, for instance, and we can jointly collaborate to promote the ports and the railway services that they themselves offer.
Thank you, Alberto. Very, very clear answer. And I will go to Francesco Nanni Costa for the second question, please.
Yes. The need of replacement of the rolling stocks is a priority. We can say that is common in each region involved in the project. In particular, the need is the shift from the traction of the locomotives from diesel to the electric mode 1. In particular, this measure was identified in Slovenia as illustrated in the documentation that they provide and by the activity that they carried out during these years of work. And thanks to the replacement of the national rail carrier, they foreseen to increase the capacity of the 30%, to lower the maintenance cost by 20%, and to reduce the operation cost for the 20%. This is a measure that requires a huge investment, and finding needs is the investment are divestment of the railway companies, and you can also financing with some combination of public and private fund, or other possible common fund like the national or European one.
Thank you, Francesco, and thank you all other speakers of this session. We at this stage close the REIF project related presentation and journey, and now we have a new session. It is an international session on some specific topic that arise in the REIF project and we consider quite relevant for the future development of the rail transport in Europe, the freight, obviously, rail transport in Europe. And we have three keynote speeches by three different experts on specific topics. The first topic is on intermodal nodes. The second topic is on policies for boosting multimodal transport, and the third one is referred to the EU plan for sustaining the rail transport in the future. So I will start from the intermodal terminals, key to modal shift. The presentation is by Klaus-Uwe Sondermann, that is the managing director of KombiKonsult, and I would thank you very much to Klaus to join us and submit your input. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for the possibility to speak to you. I hope that I can be understood and that my screen is actually shared with you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the feedback. So the topic I'm addressing today is intermodal terminals as a key to modal shift. Are intermodal terminals the only key? No, there are several keys. In particular, the infrastructure networks, as we have heard also prior to my presentation this morning. We have the need for standardized equipment in intermodal transport, and of course, we are relying on efficient intermodal transport services, which are governed by competitive business models. However, this is the framework, but today the presentation is about intermodal terminals, and I will provide evidence why they are key. So the agenda for today is to inform you about the recent developments of combined transport flows in Germany. I will illustrate the transshipment facilities in Germany. I will guide you through the performance review of the existing funding guidelines for intermodal terminals in Germany, and I will present to you a forecast of the combined transport development required until 2030, including an investment planning for new and extended intermodal terminal. And I will provide you also with a proposal for the design of the future funding guidelines as a continuation of the existing ones. And as a conclusion, there will be some takeaways for you in respective countries and wherever you are engaged with intermodal transport. So what is an intermodal terminal? Just quickly, it is needed for the transshipment of intermodal loading units between the different modes of transport: road, rail, intermodal, inland waterway, short sea shipping, and deep sea shipping. This picture illustrates an inland terminal, so a dry terminal with only the two modes, rail and road, and it's made of a gate area with automated check-in, buffer tracks for the parking of rail wagon, the transshipment tracks, which should be train long, some buffer lanes in order to compensate delays in the transportation of road and rail, but also storage and depot functions for a longer time, storage of intermodal transport units in the terminals, and of course some loading and driving lanes, as well as a road access to vicinity logistic infrastructures, and of course also the direct, if possible, as in this case, electrified rail access to the terminal associated with an OCR gate identifying the loading units and wagon entering and leaving the terminal. The development of unaccompanied combined transport railroad in Germany in the last years was quite positive. You see here the diagram derived from the national statistics and by the three market segments. So domestic transport within Germany, the international transport, meaning transport across border from the German perspective, and the transit traffic, which is just transiting Germany, where no terminal handling in Germany is required. This is why we have this market segmentation. Why do you think that I'm presenting you old figures? No, I'm presenting you also more recent figures. They have been published recently by the Statistical Office, and they show that the trend of increasing combined transport railroad in Germany has been a stable growth path, even covering the pandemic years. So we are on the good track for increasing road, rail, combined transport in Germany. But we are also on a proper way for inland waterway road combined transport in Germany. I say this and I include it because finally the terminals which I'm addressing in the presentation are also covering the inland waterway road transport opportunities, of course, which take place mostly on the River Rhine, but also in the canal areas of Germany. Now, for the different terminal classes, we in Germany have, of course, a map of those terminals, where they are located, by whom they are operated, and which modes of transport they are serving. And we have a table that illustrates that we have in total about 149 terminals, of which 20 are operated by the incumbent rail DB infrastructure manager DB Netz, of which 89 terminals have been funded by the guidelines since 1998, and there are still some 40 terminals which have not yet received such funding, but which, however, deploy also a certain capacity. Overall, we have 14 million loading units of handling capacity in those terminals, which were in the year 2019 used by a volume of more than 9 million loading units. So overall, the utilization rate was 67%. These terminals have been, as I indicated, financed by Germany in different ways, namely for those terminals where DB Netz, the railway infrastructure manager, is the investor. We have a specific law for the expansion of the federal railways, but for the terminals in so-called private legal ownership, we have these particular guidelines since 1998 for the funding of combined transport transshipment facilities. And for those who do not know that scheme, or that schemes. I have a certain a nutshell information for you. The construction of new and upgrading of existing sites is co-financed from these guidelines. The components eligible for funding, which are listed explicitly in the guidelines, may receive a funding of up to 80% of the erection costs, including planning. Of course, in order to do that, you need to hand in an application, and you should not start works before ending in the application. The project proposal must demonstrate its economical viability by a business plan that the investor has to hand in with the application. And it's assessed by permanent staff of competent authorities. The applicant must provide security that he is able to repay the funds if the terminals are not maintained open for operations for more than 10 or 20 years, depending on the funding rate. The terminal owner and the terminal investor must be independent from the operator. So this is pretty much the same as it was indicated for the port authorities, which are pretty much the landlord type, while they have concession takers, in this case, terminal operators, doing the daily business. Of course, not only by the funding rate, but also by the funding, it is made clear that these terminals have to be open in a non-discriminatory way to different users. So, what was the funding since 1998? We have about 120 projects. In some terminals, more than one project was implemented, with an overall investment volume of 1.5 billion euro, of which a little more than 1 billion was funded from public sources, so from the federal budget. The overall funding rate for all of the different terminals, all over the different years, was not 80%, because that is the maximum possible. The finally resulting funding rate was 68%. And it is clear that next to these eligible investments, there were additional money spent by the investors for logistics service facilities such as depots. The total additional capacity supplied by the measures was 7.7 million loading units, which are still in operations since the initial inauguration of the terminal. The majority of which was for new builds, but nevertheless 3.2 billion loading units were also for expansion of capacities. What is the success of the funding guidelines? The success of the funding guidelines is in different ways. It is about, in the unit of ton kilometers, only in the year 2019, about 4.5 million truck journeys were relieved from roads to rail and inland waterway, and a total of 38 billion ton kilometers of transport performance were modally shifted from road. By this, about 2.7 million tons of CO2 emissions were avoided just in this very year. And along with that came the avoidance of almost 1 billion euros of external costs. Over the lifetime of 20 years of an intermodal terminal, the so-called holding period, about 18.7 billion euro of economic benefits would be generated. This is then the economic return on invest of the public money in such kind of terminal investments. And this is why we say for 1 euro of funding and socio-economic benefit of 18.7 euro is generated. In terms of a modal shift, there is also another effect, namely the effect of 5.6 percentage points less road transport than in Germany in the year 2019, compared to the situation that no such intermodal transshipments would have been carried out. So this is a certain success, which makes us conclude that such kind of funding mechanism, the investment in intermodal terminals, should be continued. And we have calculated the handling capacity need by 2030 if the German goal of 25% market share of rail and a certain market share for inland waterway should be achieved by that year. So if this is the political target, which is also supported by the sector, of course, then the present capacity of about 13 million loading units per year should be extended to more than 16 million loading units per year, both in the port and inland terminals, and both for the railroad and inland waterway road transshipment. That means that by the year 2030, so by the year 2030, an additional capacity of 3.2 million loading units should be supplied, of which 1.8 million is for the inland terminals and 1.3 million for the terminals in the vicinity of seaports. This is the operational, the transport-related handling capacity. The technical capacity that needs to be installed in order to achieve that is even higher. It is 3.7 million loading units of additional capacity. Of course, and this leads over to the next slide, in the next 8 years, also terminals will become older, and you can imagine that the terminal initially built in the year 1998 is made of components, rail tracks, switches, cranes, reach stackers, and other equipment that is outdated and may not work any longer. So we also have to face the replacement need of terminals, and this made us clear, made us to write down a clear recommendation towards the policymaker. That means the Ministry of Transport and the Parliament, of course, to maintain and to continue the basic principles that I presented to you in the nutshell, but also to extend the scope of activities to the replacement of existing facilities by newer, better, more modern facilities. To maintain also the technological openness, so not to limit it to crane terminals, but to be open in terms of technology, to leave it to the decision of the investor and the operator to choose the best terminal for the market needs. And we have, of course, also, but for the international audience, I think it would go too much into detail, improvements in detail in the regulation regarding the appropriateness, the list of eligibility criteria, the owner-operator regulations, and the possibilities to relieve some of the bureaucratic efforts for the applications. So what are the takeaways that I would like you to have in mind if it comes to the German funding regulation for intermodal terminals? Then the takeaways are that indeed the intermodal terminals are key for modal shift. They are the infrastructure component making the modal shift possible. The funding of the infrastructure cost, rather than an operational aid, is an appropriate means of improving the competitiveness of intermodal supply chains, since by the infrastructure cost support, the rental fee of the terminal is lowered, and by the rental fee, the price for each and every handling is lowered permanently, not 1 year, but over the lifetime of 20 years. The modal shift targets, as you have seen, as well as the socio-economic benefits and the CO2 reduction goals could be achieved as demonstrated. The program-based funding of individual terminals upon application is a perfect means, because it is a stable program to which any applicant can refer to. He does not compete. There's no need for competition with other projects, but only terminal projects. And then the best terminal project is the winner, of course. According to our opinion, the sustainable and economic viability has been demonstrated through the market drive. So it is not that the state said, I want to build a terminal in this town or the neighboring town. It is the market which decides where, when, and how to build and operate the terminal. And in this scenario, of course, also the servicing of the terminal by intermodal operators, railway undertakings, inland waterway operators, ferry lines, and so on for the respective terminals is assured. So with this, the necessary capacity, rather than the compliance with some political goals, is achieved. And I think this is a full package for you that I can hand over to you. And I will not only hand over this these takeaways to you, but also announce that we have updated the terminal map for Germany. Now the 2022 version should be available in the next days on our website. If you don't find it, you can send me an email and I will send the map to you so that you have the best possible reference for intermodal terminals in Germany. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Klaus. I will collect the question, and if we will have enough time, submit to all of you the question at the question and answer session at the end of this international session. The second speech is related to boosting on multimodal transport to achieve the Green Deal objectives, the user's perspective, that is by Costantino Cau. Thank you very much, Costantino Cau, that is policy advisor at CLECAT, the European Association of Freight Forwarding, Transport, Logistics and Customs Services, where he is responsible for rail and air freight, supply chain security and digitalization. So please.
Thank you very much, Andrea. With this, I will start my presentation here, where we will focus a bit on the user's perspective. What we have seen in multimodal transport, which relates mostly, of course, to the combined transport regime that is in place nowadays and which is under revision, is that there is a lack of harmonized definitions and interpretations. And we think that in general, if you look at the state of the art here for combined transport and the rail sector as such, we will have to make a significant effort towards decarbonization in the coming decades, with rail having a particular role in this. So we believe that without action here, this will not be achievable. And that's what I'm going to show a bit here. As you can see on the slide, the share of rail freight remains at 19%, which is rather low if you compare it with the road share, which is at 75%, and then inland waterways only at 6%. So when we look now specifically at the Combined Transport Directive, which provides the framework here, is that the lack of clarity that persists has led to significantly diverging interpretations of the directive itself over the past 20 years. This starts at very general things, like, for example, the definition of what is a combined transport operation actually. So is it a one-leg road operation? Is it a two-leg road operation? There we have significant differences amongst the member states. For example, France defines it as, defines the road transport part as a one-leg operation, while Germany and the Netherlands, for example, define it as a two-leg operation. So from that, you can already see that it inherently will lead to a different application of the directive and of the benefits that stem from it. A similar issue which we see is the authorization of heavier loads, especially in cross-border operations. Here we often see that this again distorts the level playing field, and you have certain problems with it because, for example, when you look at France and Belgium, when you start an operation in Belgium as the road part destined for a multimodal terminal in France, France will classify the road part of this operation as a road operation and not as a combined transport operation, as the combined transport operation for France will have to start in France itself. So in the end, the operators then need to request exemptions for this to be seen as a combined transport operation, which of course is possible, but it's an extra administrative burden and it leads to problems in the end. You have a further problem here, which is quite big, and the combined transport operation in Germany, with the operation ending when the goods have been delivered. So here, any empty container that is being delivered after, that is returning after the cargo has been delivered, is not seen as part of a combined transport journey, and it could qualify as a cabotage operation to the detriment of the operator, thereby leading situations of legal uncertainty for the businesses because they risk breaching the law and receiving penalties for these actions. So in the end, this disincentivizes companies from investing in combined transport, which is of course in the long run detrimental and something that we do not want to have here. Another problem that we have seen is, for example, incorrect application of the definitions. For example, in Sweden, the way the combined transport operation is defined precludes certain operations which actually fall within the scope of the directive to benefit from the beneficial regime of the directive. To that end, the Commission had already sent a letter formal notice in 2020, but just as an example of what can happen in the EU and what issues are persisting. That would be on the definition part. Another big problem that we see is the infrastructure, which is in general often insufficient or at least not correctly used, especially regarding terminal infrastructure. Here we can see, for example, that the number and the distance of terminals in the EU member states, it differs significantly. And you might have a member state which has a great network of terminals, but of course in cross-border operations, and combined transport as such is by nature most often cross-border, you will need corresponding infrastructure in the next state. So you might have the best infrastructure in Europe, but if you don't have a good connection, this won't help much. So one of the big issues we see here, and then again, another problem with the infrastructure is the priority, which is often then given to passenger transport, which leaves then a limited amount of capacity and also flexibility for freight transport. And we see this especially here with the COVID-19 crisis, which showed that when rail freight has significant capacity available and some flexibility, it can offer great services. But when this is constrained, it's of course much more difficult to provide good services. And in the end, the companies will shift to rail transport or combined transport if they can meet their contractual requirements. But if you have to count on delays and problems, the likelihood of switching is much lower. A third part, which we can see here, is the cost, which just by definition is often higher in combined transport due to its inherent nature that is of course connected to logistical planning, which it needs transshipment, and thereby also has increased administrative burdens. So in the end, it is often more costly and not always competitive with road transport. Of course, the longer the journey becomes, the more cost competitive it becomes as well. But here the cost factor needs to be considered. So based on that, what we see as the main problems currently in Europe connected to the combined transport regime, I'm going to present a bit of the proposals which we see for the review of the combined transport directive, as these more or less represents the needs of freight forwarders and the industry as such concerning the policies, investments, and the regulation that needs to be there at EU level to boost multimodal transport. And this conference comes very timely now, also with the European Commission having opened its public consultation on the review of the combined transport directive just this Monday. So this is going to be quite suitable in time here. The first thing that I noted in my earlier slide was the definitions, which are unclear in Europe. So here we really want to emphasize that clear definitions are needed, leaving no room for misinterpretation amongst the member states. So we think that there should also be a clarification between what is actually multimodal, intermodal, and combined transport, because in practice we see that this is often used interchangeably. However, these are three different concepts, all derived from another, but it needs to be clear that there are differences, and for that we would propose that also the definitions should be then enshrined in the legislation, and this would also show them the difference between intermodal and multimodal transport, where you also have, of course, the transshipment versus the goods themselves being handled separately. Connected to that, to these clear definitions being needed, we believe that an additional thing would be to change the legal form, if possible, from a directive into a regulation. This refers mostly to the fact that a directive requires national transposition, whilst the regulation is immediately effective in the member states. So hereby we would avoid the problem of different interpretations and applications of the rules, which we think in the end would be more beneficial for the industry and for combined transport or multimodal transport as such. Tying into the next point, that we would suggest, or we would strongly suggest, to extend the scope of the regime to all multimodal transport operations in the Union, as has also come forward in the earlier call for evidence by the Commission. We highly commend this, because we think that just restricting it to combined transport would be too limited here, as especially the difference between combined transport and multimodal transport is not a significant one, but it lies actually in the technicalities of how the goods are moved. So here we believe that if you would extend it to all multimodal transport operations, we could really reap the full benefits of rail freight transport and contribute towards the greening of the industry. One additional point that we see from the regulatory side would be the introduction of accurate measurement and reporting of GHG emissions. We believe that this is important because there should be a way for operators to see how carbon intensive their journey is. So you should, in the end, analyze the overall sustainability of this transport journey which you are undertaking, and based on that take your decisions. Because, for example, on a short route, the road-only transport might even be more beneficial in terms of GHG emissions than a combined transport operation. Would make more sense to shift to that. Whilst in the long run, the longer the journey becomes, it's of course always more sustainable to shift to multimodal transport operations. Now, following these more or less framework criteria on what we think would be important on the legislative side, we would also look into the incentives for multimodal transport operations. Of course, we believe that if you want to move towards shift to rail or shift to multimodality, this shift should come from the industry. So it should be industry-driven, market-driven, and not based on requirements imposed by the legislature, because a forced modal shift will be difficult or will not happen at all. So here we would like to bring forward some incentives which our members have considered being important for them to shift to multimodal transport. One of them, and one of the very important ones, would be to support mixed trains at EU level. We believe that this would bring major benefits, as such an utilization of mixed trains would allow for more flexibility and actually represent the market reality. Because in practice, we see that this is not the case in most of the EU member states. So it would be, in the end, much more efficient, competitive, and attractive for the end customer to have such a possibility if there was support for such mixed trains on EU level. And we see some best practice here in Belgium being introduced, but at the same time, some other member states have not necessarily legal prohibitions, but factual prohibitions. For example, with different funding schemes existing for combined transport and multimodal transport terminals, where if you use one terminal for a different purpose, you will lose the funding. So here, while it's not legally enforced, it is a practical application of the framework, which leads to such disincentive here. And we think that this follows an outdated model of rail freight transport operations, and thus it should be allowed at the end. Additionally, what we see as a very important part here is upholding the cabotage exemption for multimodal transport operations, because we see the danger that with more and more member states opting for the potential deviation from this Article 4 exemption, we will have problems for combined transport and multimodal transport, leading to disincentives here. We've already seen that some Nordic countries, including Finland and Switzerland, have notified to the Commission that they will deviate from this rule. So this is already a risk. And if we consider the Commission's study on the impacts of these cabotage restrictions from 2020, it had already stated that a widespread application thereof would lead to increased emissions and a mid to long-term negative impact on rail and intermodal freight. So this is something that we believe should be ensured in the legislation, so as to avoid such a negative development. Additional incentives which could be there could be, for example, exemptions from traffic bans on the weekends or on the holidays when you're using multimodal transport, as well as the continuation and also an extension of heavier load authorizations, which would also be an incentive for using multimodal transport. I believe that all of these are sort of solutions which you can introduce without having a direct financial impact. However, direct financial support measures are of course also possible and welcome, as long as they do not distort competition. So this led to some thinking on our side how this could be achieved, and we believe that a sort of an eco premium could be a good way forward, which would mean giving an operator an incentive who switches his goods from road to rail, limited to this incentive covering actually the extra cost that he incurred for this modal shift. Of course, there are also indirect financial support measures next to the general ones we had before at infrastructure level and legal framework level, which could be, for example, a further reduction of the track access charges, a waiver of the road tolls for the road part of the multimodal transport operation, and a reduction of the administrative burdens that are currently in place, which are quite extensive. As well as the last possibility that we have brought forward here would be an EU funding scheme for cradleable trailers, because these would incentivize the use of multimodal transport operations. However, it is unclear how many companies would actually be interested in that. So it would be premature to force the use of such trailers, but at least a funding scheme to make up for the extra cost would, in our view, be beneficial. And we believe that all of these incentives together would lead to a more market-driven modal shift, which would be highly welcomed. Additionally, since we also wanted to look at the practical implications here regarding this, this conference today, we believe that mostly capacity and quality need to be addressed.
Sorry, 2 minutes, Mr. Kanu, please.
Yes, I will run through this very briefly. So we think that capacity and quality are one of the main factors here which are still negative and which need to be addressed. So we believe that missing links should be closed as a priority, and the transshipment infrastructure should be increased where possible. Again, coupled with a higher allocation of paths for freight trains and increased priority and flexibility for those trains, which we know is not always easy, but it would help the industry very much, especially because in certain parts of Europe, the transshipment infrastructure, for example, is limited, and there this should be improved. Then another important point here would be the optimization of integrated site logistics with sufficient availability to multimodal terminals, which would actually respond to the client needs. So it should be really targeted to what does the customer need and how can I fulfill those requirements, as well as increased efficiency, especially regarding the waiting times and an overall reduction of terminal costs. Lastly, we have, again, from a legal view, the removal of the nearest suitable terminal, which we think it should be left up to the operator to justify why he reached a certain terminal, which in his view was the most suitable one, because, for example, it had the necessary equipment there for the transshipment. Additionally, we have flexibility in the road leg and the connectivity with the southeast of Europe on the New Silk Road, as well as the important digitalization efforts which are taking place at the Commission around the EFTI regulation. So providing information, focusing on the provision of information rather than the provision of documents. And this is just for the handouts. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Cano. And thank all the participants and the speaker of this international session that was very, very rich of content and input for the REIF project partners. So thank you again. We are unfortunately half an hour in delay, and that's as Italian, according my viewpoint, is not so bad, half an hour in delay. Anyway, this is an European project, so unfortunately I have to squeeze the agenda and I have to sacrifice the question and answer session. Please don't mind. For that, we will try to do my best, our best, to reply by mail to some of the questions that the participants submitted in the box. So I would ask to the three speakers to be so kind to provide an input in the next days by mail. We will contact you to try to collect some of these points. Thank you again, and let me in the remaining half an hour go directly to the last session, that is the REIF Shift to Regional Rail Award, as already anticipated by the Klaus and other REIF member. We as a REIF project organize an award trying to collect and select some of the most interesting practice in Europe on respect of modal shift initiative from road to rail. And we as project partners collected 10 application and I would say that we, as an internal commission, selected the most relevant according to our viewpoint, but I want to underline that all of them are definitely very interesting experience and practice. But we decided to select three of them, and let me mention, shifting to the awarding ceremony, to mention the three winners of the award, that are the three of them that I mentioned, and then I will ask to submit their input one by one. The three of them are the Port of Hamburg, the Port Authority of Valencia, and the North Adriatic Seaport Authority, that is the Port of Venice. So I want to ask to the winner one by one to submit their input, their speech in this half an hour, asking them to try to stay in your time to avoid to overrun and the 12:30 as scheduled in the program. So I want to also motivate the reason behind the selection of the three winners. And I would start from the Port of Hamburg, and in particular, the reason behind the decision to select the Port of Hamburg is related to the fact that the Port of Hamburg obviously is a leading freight hub in Europe, and according to the data, the Port of Hamburg increased the rail connection with its hinterland from 28 million tons in 2002 to 46 million tons in 2020. That means that today the share of the rail is higher on respect of the share of the road. So some very relevant and impressive result. And despite the success obtained, Hamburg Port Authority will continue to invest in the near future to foster rail transportation with an ambitious some ambitious projects focus on the increasing also of digitalization of the rail freight, the proactive predictive infrastructure maintenance, and also increasing the automation in the rail operation to enhance intermodality and safeguard, allowing to grow again the quantity of freight transport by rail. So these are the motivation behind, and I would ask to Stefan Breitenbach, that is the head of project department of the Port of Hamburg, to submit his input. I think that there is a PowerPoint presentation, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, thank you, Andrea.
Hi, Stefan.
Hi, very nice to see you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's a very well honored to be awarded with your award and within this project framework. It's very great to be here. So I try to start the presentation. Just give me a second. Do it like that. and I hope you can see it now.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, put in presentation mode, please.
Yeah, here we go.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much once more. And dear ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor to be awarded. We are very happy. My name is Stefan Breitenbach, as announced by Andreas, and I'm working with Port of Hamburg Marketing. And we had the pleasure to apply for this award in the name of Hamburg and the Port Authority. So the Port of Hamburg is not only a maritime port, as most of you know, but we are also a very large rail port. And this has some historical background I'm going to present in a couple of slides. And yeah, our national location is between North and Baltic Sea, and especially within the Baltic Sea and Central Europe, East Europe, it's our core hinterland, I would say. In total, we had about 126 million tons volume in 2020. The latest figures for 21 just were released, so we had a small increase. But what is more impressive is the share of railway traffic within the port hinterland transportation, which accounts to 51% in 2020 and even slightly more in 2021. And as Andrea already said, it's a massive increase which we managed to undertake. If you look back to the year 2002, it means that we increased rail share by 66% in the time period to 2020, while road transport just raised by 1%. And this also illustrates our wish and also our core aim to promote rail as sustainable transport mode in hinterland traffic together with barge, I have to say. Yeah, past and current study shows that there will be continuous growth, strong growth in the volume of transport, especially in Europe, and that we really need to prepare for that as well. And the expected growth and traffic will raise serious transport and environmental challenges for sure, if no structural measures are taken to significantly improve the modal split in favor of railways and barge transportation. This slide shows that the Port of Hamburg has a dense railway network, which is operated by the Hamburg Port Railway Department belonging to the Hamburg Port Authority. So in total, we have about 290 kilometers tracks and connect more or less every container terminal as well as other terminals within the port with own railway slidings. We have 3 connection points to the national rail network, which is very important because this provides some efficient access and also provides capacity so that not a railway train needs to cross more or less the entire board to access the national and European network, but can choose between the nearest connection. Over the years, the railway network really developed. In total, we have about 1,900 marketed connections, and this means that on the railway network in the port area, about 5,500 wagons daily are being dispatched, loaded, unloaded, and so on and so on. Strongest market for sure is Germany, but also looking a little bit more to the east and southeast, we have very good block train connections. One thing which promoted railway business even more is a total development of a communication system, total new development of the communication system, looking back in 2014, where the Port Authority developed Transport Rail, which is an overarching system architecture where all relevant stakeholders have access to the latest information, for sure only to information they really need and which is belonging to them. And this allows a very efficient steering of transport as well. And it was linked to specific rail access charge systems, so that you can also prioritize trains, that we have different prioritized tracks and so on, to increase efficiency and also increase the potential trains which can call support at the same time. The system has also been connected to specific system which automatically detect wagon numbers, status of containers, and so on. And this information is also fed directly in the system to better automate processes. A quite unique, oh, sorry. A quite unique implementation was the decision to launch a locomotive service point within the port. So we have a storage space for 32 locomotives. We have a locomotive workshop, and there are also a sending possibility and tank filling station for locomotives. This is very good, as we don't have so many movements of the locomotive crossing the entire port to get somewhere else to get the maintenance or to just find a waiting passage, berth, whatever. So it was located strategically in the middle of the port, very well accessible, and this is also a measure which increased capacity on the entire network very massively. Just to give you some impressions how it looks like in real life, it's still brand new, and there's also some thoughts to extend the filling stations, for example, by hydrogen in future, to provide also sustainable fuel and don't be depending on diesel in future. As I said, our connections to the national network is very, very important for us. But also within the port, we steadily improve the infrastructure. A lot of measures are ongoing. Some of them already have been finalized. I think the main point is that we really need these well-functioning access point to national and European rail networks, that there needs to be good harmonization in the networks, and that you steadily need to do something to increase the capacity to cope with the steady upgoing traffic. A lot of improvement in infrastructures have been undertaken, as I said, but some of them are still ongoing, and this will meet the additional demands so far as we can see for the next decades. For sure, no one knows exactly what we hope so. Yeah, and this was a very quick run through of the situation, how we have it in the Port of Hamburg. Once more, we are very, very happy to be awarded, and look forward also to the other presentations. Thank you very much, Andrea.
Thank you, Stefan, and congrats again. Let me go to the other awards that, as already said, goes to the Port of Valencia. The motivation are the Port of Valencia is developing a large mix of support policies for supporting the rail network and market support to increase the competitiveness of the rail sector, especially with policy to enhance port hinterland connection and other main Spanish hubs by allocating huge investment in cutting-edge technological improvement projects for the intermodal supply chain. And actions already implemented or planned by the Port Authority of Valencia are contributing to promote shift freight from road to rail, and are inspiring other ports and regions at national and European level. A special mention goes to Port Authority of Valencia experience in promoting the relevance of the rail freight sector in the context of the European Year of the Railway, with the campaign Goods by Train, held in Valencia and sponsored by private and public institutions. And I will ask to the Port of Valencia to submit the input instead of Aurelio Martinez, the president of the Port Authority of Valencia, who will make a speech. Salvatore Furio, that is the director of innovation and cluster development of the Foundation Valencia Port. Please, Furio.
Thank you, Andrea. First of all, please accept the apologies of Aurelio Martinez, the president of the Port Authority of Valencia, because in the end he couldn't attend the ceremony as it was expected. Anyway, I will make a short presentation. Well, on behalf of the Port Authority of Valencia and all the port community, I would like to thank the REIF project for this award. For us, it's a great honor to collect this award, which shows our commitment to the intermodality, promoting the use of rail. And it's an honor to do it together with other ports like the Port of Hamburg, that is, of course, a reference in intermodal transport and rail transport. I'm going to share my screen. Please tell me if you can.
Yes, we can see very well. Thank you.
Okay, perfect then. Well, the Port Authority of Valencia manages 3 ports, Valencia, Sagunto, and Gandia. Valenciaport is Spain's leading container port and the 4th biggest in Europe, according to the latest data published. Valenciaport has consolidated its position as the Spanish port with the best connectivity in 2021, according to the Liner Shipping Connectivity Index elaborated by UNCTAD. And concerning rail traffic is fundamental for Valenciaport, as for years many railway actions have been carried out, which have allowed to build a port of reference in the Mediterranean based on intermodality. In 2021, more than 4,000 trains were managed in Valenciaport, with an average of more than 80 trains a week, operated by 10 different railways undertakings, linking the Valencia terminals with the main corridors in Spain, the Valencia-Madrid corridor, the Mediterranean corridor, and the Mediterranean-Cantabrian corridor, fostering the creation of an integrated network with the main intermodal hubs in Spain. Valenciaport is going to allocate a large amount of infrastructure improvements in the ports of Valencia and Sagunto. Some examples of current and planned actions are the remodeling of the railway network in the Port of Valencia, the electrification of the tracks, the adaptation of the network to the European gauge, and the railway access to the Port of Sagunto. The Port Authority of Valencia is undertaking important rail infrastructures in collaboration with other public and private authorities. It is worth highlighting that the new container terminal to be built in the northern expansion of the Port of Valencia is expected to increase rail traffic by 300,000 TEUs per year, and an average of 10 trains per day at the Port of Valencia. The ambitious goal of this new terminal is for rail to have the 30% share of the hinterland traffic. Valenciaport supports the improvement of infrastructures of 3 corridors with an investment of more than 50 million euros in the Mediterranean-Cantabrian corridor, and more than 90 million euros in initiatives already carried out and foreseen. Valenciaport is one of the shareholders in the most important dry ports of Madrid and Zaragoza, and it participates in the extension of the Valencia Fuente San Luis, which is the logistics and intermodal terminal connected with the port of Valencia. The investments that Valenciaport is making are producing successfully results. For example, we are allocating more than 84.6 million euros to improve the Zaragoza-Teruel-Sagunto-Valencia line, which is being noticed in the increasing traffic on the Cantabria-Mediterranean corridor, with weeks that reach 40 trains on average. In the short term, a new rail motorway will link Valencia and Madrid for transport of platforms arriving or leaving the port on board vessels, mainly in the motorway of sea services connecting Valenciaport. This picture shows some of the initiatives related to the zero emissions strategy of the port. The Port Authority is committed in collaboration with the whole port community to the Valenciaport 2030 zero emissions objective. Valenciaport is promoting initiatives for using clean energies. The Port of Valencia will be the first port in Europe to introduce hydrogen technologies to reduce the environmental impact of terminal machinery operations. And focusing on rail transport, Valenciaport is analyzing also the development of an hydrogen-powered locomotive for journeys within the port area, or the connection of the port area with the intermodal station of Fuente San Luis. Digitalization and innovation are key pillars of this strategy of Valenciaport to achieve a zero emissions port. In terms of digitalization on rail transport, it's worth highlighting the efforts that were made to adapt the port community system of Valenciaport to the rail transport operations. And Valenciaport is a pioneer port in Spain in the implementation of the European TAF TSI standard to exchange information with actors involved in the rail freight transport, improving interoperability, safety, and efficiency on rail freight transport. In addition, it's also been implemented a completely automated paperless customs release with an OCR system, which is being implemented in Valenciaport for the management of railway container traffic. In conclusion, the strategy of Valenciaport for the coming years is to continue increasing the use of railway in freight traffic through the investment in infrastructure, the public-private collaboration, and the innovation to increase competitiveness and contribute to the European objectives of the Green Deal. Valenciaport, through its Innovation and Training Center, is developing the Valenciaport Innovation Hub that will allow us to select and support the best startups to develop innovative solutions that respond to the business challenges of the Valenciaport cluster. That's all from my part. Thanks again, Andrea and all the team for this award, and we are very happy.
Thank you very much, Salvador, and congrats again, and also for the effective PowerPoint presentation and the picture that were very effective in terms of communication. And please greet also to Aurelio Martinez, your president. Thanks again. So the other award, at last but not least, the other award, as I said before, goes to the North Adriatic Seaport Authority, that is a former Port Authority of Venice, Fulvio Avellino Di Blasio, the president, but I think that the input will be submitted by, if I'm not wrong, James Orlandi, that is a head of European Project Department. Let me give you some input about the motivation behind the award to the Port of Venice. So the Port of Venice strategy on modal shift are in line, perfectly in line with the principle of the REIF project, since the objective of enhancing rail transport has focused on strengthening the regional intermodal system. In particular, the connections between terrestrial and maritime platforms supported by collaborative action of engagement and a dialogue between stakeholders and local and international partners. The strategy was also formalized in a recent approval of the regional transport plan, and is confirmed by the joint participation of the Veneto region and the Port Authority to a variety of European finance projects, including Central Europe and also Connecting Europe Facility projects. So one of the reasons is the tightly connection between the strategy of the Port Authority that is included and strongly embedded in the regional transport plan approved by the Regione Veneto, that is a region where Venice is located, and this is the capital city of the Veneto region. So congrats again, thank you again. I see the PowerPoint presentation. I think that James Orlandi, if I'm not wrong, will make the speech.
Yes, and do you hear me? Thank
Yeah.
you, and thank you, Andrea, for your words, and thank you for the award. We are very glad to have received it because it recognizes our efforts to improve multimodal transport in the Port of Venice. I am bringing the regards of our president, which could not attend today, but I know that he is very proud of this award also because one of the priorities of our new port investment plan is indeed to improve multimodal rate in order to achieve European Green Deal objectives. I will try to be very quick since I am the last speaker, and just to present the Port of Venice in a few slides. For those who don't know us, we are a multi-port system composed by a core maritime inland port of Venice and the comprehensive port of Chioggia, which is inland comprehensive port of the TEN-T network. And in Venice, we have a commercial side in the mainland and a passenger port in the city center of the island. So we are a multi-port lagoon system, which the particularity also to have the combination with also all four modes of transport, including the inland waterway system, Italian inland waterway system. Going to the port railing network, we have an extended port railing network, not as extended as the Port of Hamburg, of course. I saw that to 290 kilometers. We have 65 kilometers, which is for us is quite extensive. It's very complex, with a main freight station, with 12 tracks for arrival and departure, and sidings connecting through 70 tracks all the terminals and other, of course, rail port facilities. We are indeed part of the rail freight corridors network of the European Union. And I must say that talking about rail traffic, we are seeing a lot of increase since 2015. We are seeing a constant increase of rail traffic. As you can see, apart from the 2019 that we have a small flexion due to the bankruptcy of some important player here in the Port of Venice, the trend is constantly increase. In 2020, we had almost 2 million of tons moved by railways, which is compared to 10% of our total tons of managed by the port, because in the 2020 we have 20 million of tons managed by the port, so 10% is moved by freight, which is by rail, which is important. Is a good rate percentage in line with the European rates. And we are expecting another increase thanks to new terminal operating and also new investment to pass from 2.5 million to 3.5 million in the next future. Our main rail traffic is related to bulk products, steel products, energy products, agri-bulk and chemical, and we have a very small percentage at the moment of ro-ro and containers. For the market, basically we are serving at 70% the northeastern Italian market, national market, but we have almost 30% serving the Central Europe area, particularly Austria and Germany. Austria via Tarvisio and Germany via Brenner. And this is a percentage increasing in the next year. This month we will have starting a new service connecting the port of Venice to Cologne. So we see also traffic, transnational traffic increasing. What is our vision to improve multimodal transport? Basically, most important, invest in port rail infrastructure. We are planning to invest in new tracks, avoid interfering with local road traffic, create a new intermodal platform, new rolling stock, and so on. But also managing shunting company is important for us because we can maintain competitive rates. Information technologies, also digitalization of the shunting operation. We are seeing also thanks to the TalkNet Central Europe program, co-funded by Central Europe program, is a key factor to improve the efficiency of multimodal transport. And finally, a collaborative approach with all the main stakeholders. In particular, I would like to mention the collaboration that we have with Veneto region and the infrastructure manager of National Infrastructure Manager, RFI, with an agreement signed 2018 for a total value of 50 million to improve in the short and medium term last mile connection and overcome some limitation that we have here in the Port of Venice. Just 3 examples of where we want to invest to improve multimodal transport. First of all, we are designing a new railway bridge, which the design was co-financed by this Connecting Europe Facility program, and the construction will be co-financed by the Italian Recovery Resilience Facility plan for 80 million. This infrastructure is very important because it will allow us to improve rail capacity, reduce interference with the local road traffic, and most of all, we have to remove a bottleneck to avoid the bottleneck of Venice Mestre station, which is an important passenger station of the core urban node of Mestre, which put to our traffic a lot of limitations, of course, also in the making of the convoy, because we need, of course, to give priority to the passenger traffic and then to the freight traffic. Second investment, very important, will be a new direct connection to the TEN-T network, to the national network, serving the new container terminal that will be ready in the next years. So the idea is to bypass completely the Mestre rail station in order to have a free connection by rail and road, especially by rail, to the main to national road, national line, in order to avoid the bottleneck and to improve our multimodal transport. This will be a key investment for our ports. And finally, as I mentioned before, the shunting system, the integrated informative shunting system, which was implemented also thanks to TalkNet project. The Port of Venice was the coordinator and the lead partner of the TalkNet, co-financed by Interreg Central Europe. And I didn't know REIF project, but today I learned that there was a lot of similarities and common points among these 2 projects. So it's good to see that we are in line with our priorities and also in our action to improve multimodal transport. So we are very happy for the award, and I'm proud of it, and also to share with important port, European port like Valencia and Hamburg. So thanks for the committee for this award, for the REIF committee for this award. I'm happy to participate in this event.
Thank you, James, and congrats again to the North Adriatic Seaport Authority. And we are 10 minutes behind the scheduled agenda. So sorry to the all the three polls to squeeze and speed up this last session, and let me congrats again all of you, and thanks all the REIF project partner in particular, and also in conclusion all the keynote speakers that enrich and enlarge the perspective of the REIF project on such a relevant topic. And last but not least, I also thanks all the participants, because we were 78 at the beginning of this session at 9 in the morning, and we still are 74, so that's not bad. Thanks for the patience to all the participants, and let me say in conclusion, to see you next event, hopefully in person. Thank you again, and bye-bye.
Yeah, may I have some closing remarks too, please, from the lead partner side?
Yes, please, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. First of all, congrats to the awardees, and really thank you to these impressive examples of intermodality and also sustainability. Secondly, I want to also say thanks to the partners. We all know that COVID was really hard for us to do the work on time, and it was do the work as it was planned really years ago. And nevertheless, the lead partner team is really proud and thankful to the partners that everything has been done as good as possible. And I'm convinced that we have created a really successful project, also which has regional and also international value. And last but not least, let me say thank you to the organizers of the event and to the contributors, and also to you, Andrea, for leading us through the event just on time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Klaus, and to all of you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you.
Bye. See you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.